Boom, 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 boom. Hey, kia ora. Helen Brahms here, coming to you live from Sun City in Arizona. Hope you're having a super fantastic, sparkling day. Welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast number 1279. Tonight, we're talking about movies that inspire travel. If you've been following me, you know I'm a bit of a movie buff. I enjoy my movies. I'm not the expert like you get some people that can probably rattle off who played who in what movie at what time, who the directors were, the writers were, the producers, blah, 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 blah. You know, I just enjoy the movies. That's all. That's it. That's me. I'm done. Except my James Bond movies. Yeah, they're a little more special. But tonight I thought it'd be really cool because we've just had or about to have, I don't even remember what day it's on. There's Plan Your Vacation Day was today, yesterday. It was recently, if it's not today or tomorrow. And some people are sort of like, plan your vacation. You really could have a plan your vacation month. January, February, March in the travel industry is known as wave season. And this is where the tour companies, the cruise companies, they put out some really, really good specials and deals and all of that. And for a travel professional, it's our busiest time of the year with people. And people go, well, what's so special about January, February, March? I said, think of all of those people in that northern state band who can't get away, who don't migrate south as a snowbird, who stay up there. They're stuck in the winter. They're buried under snow and everything else. And they're just like, I just want to get out of here and get on a beach, or I want to get on a cruise ship, just anywhere that's warmer than here where there's no snow. So think about those people. And so they're the ones that typically book at this time. And it just sort of seems to be how the cycle goes. The first quarter of the year is spent as wave season. So tonight I thought we'd talk about some movies that inspire travel. And there's some great sites out there that have some really great recommendations on movies that inspire travel and why. A lot of it's to do with where they are filmed. Which, I mean, if you're looking at movies like James Bond, we'll start with James Bond movies. They're filmed various places around the world. You get to see some amazing cities, sites, scenery and everything in a lot of James Bond movies. They're showing you different places around the world. And it's just, to me, it's like, wow, it'll be really cool to go visit there, or cool to visit that. And, you know, on my list is to go to GoldenEye in Jamaica and check it out. And yes, for those that don't know, GoldenEye is the name of Ian Fleming's house in Jamaica, where he wrote some of his James Bond books. Did you know they were actually all short stories? Yeah. When the filmmakers got hold of them, they just extended them and made them into really cool movies and stuff. So, you know, James Bond comes to mind when you're inspiring travel. There's a lot of great scenery in James Bond movies, a lot of great places that he gets to go and visit, and, you know, beautiful mountains he gets to ski down. And I'm not a skier, but it looks fantastic and it looks fun. I'm just there for the scenery when it comes to the ski scenes, and how he's going to get out of some situation with people chasing him down the hill. There's a lot of ski chases in James Bond movies, but you get to see some remote places. You get to see some exotic places. Another one that you can look at too is things like the Mission Impossible series. Another one, you know, their very first movie was there was some of it filmed in Prague. And so when Brad and I went to Prague in 2011, we were standing on the Charles Bridge there at the top of the stairs where some of the scenes from Mission Impossible were filmed. And our guide was telling us, you know, well, how many of you seen the movie? Most of us have seen the movie. She says, right, remember that scene where blah, 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 blah. Well, they were standing over there and she walked us through that scene about how it was in that particular area where we were standing. So it made it really cool. And I kind of like those tours. I like those movie tours. When I first took Brad down to New Zealand, because he had never been to New Zealand, so I took him on his first trip to New Zealand. And we did a very extensive trip that time. We did both the North Island and the South Island. And he got to see a lot of places where Lord of the Rings was filmed. And at that point, only the first Lord of the Rings movie had come out, and the second one was due, and we were down there in 2002. And then later that year, it was like October, November, the second movie of the series was coming out. So the second Lord of the Rings. So between the first movie and the second movie, Brad got to see a lot of places that were used in filming the movies. We did not get to Hobbiton at the time because it wasn't open as a tourist attraction at the time. I got to go through it a few years later on a trip that I did with other travel professionals, where we were taken on we had 3 nights in the Cook Islands and 3 nights in New Zealand. And one of our trips was the guided tour around Hobbiton. I have to say that place was impressive. Even if you haven't seen the movies, just because, and it's a guided tour, it is not a self-guide tour, it is guided. And you're part of a group that gets taken around. And so we had the 10 of us. There was 8 travel professionals and our 2 hosts that were taking us around. One was from Air New Zealand Vacations, one was from Air New Zealand. And we had a blast, and we had our own private tour guide. And they have to do it as a tour guide, because you will miss so much if you try and self-tour around the place, because they're telling you stories about how they did certain things in the movies. And like, we're standing up at one point looking out over Hobbiton. So we're up on one of the hill pieces, with an outlook over the whole of Hobbiton. And we're standing up there, and she's telling us about how in the movies, when you're watching in the movies, that hang on, I have to remember which way we were facing. Which way were we facing? So we were facing north. I think we were facing north. Hang on. Yeah, because the sun was on our left, and we were there in the morning, and it was going to sit on the right. In the movie, it's the other way around. And so they were talking about how they make the east look like the west and the west look like the east in the movies. And I'm like, well, that is interesting. But we got to learn a lot of behind the scenes stuff at Hobbiton because we were on the guided tour. Things like how you make moss grow on the sunny side of the fence when it's supposed to be, when moss grows on the side that is not sunny. Moss grows in the shade. They had moss growing on fences in full sunlight. Their gardens are still working gardens, and a lot of the fresh produce they produce in those gardens is used in the restaurants. They have trees there, and there was one particular tree they had there that's a complete fake tree. And the story goes, and it's this big tree, and the story goes that that we were told anyway, was that they assembled this tree. Every leaf on that tree was hand painted. And once they got the tree all assembled and everything, Peter Jackson didn't like the shade of green that was used on the leaves, so they had to take down all the leaves again and hand paint them in a color that he was happy with, and then reassemble the entire tree again. We got to hear lots of behind the scenes stuff on how they did certain things in certain scenes. You didn't have to see the movies to appreciate that this was a working movie site, and some of the tips and tricks they used behind the scenes. It's like when I took my mum and dad down to, we were in Wellington, and we went to Weta Workshops, and we got to do a tour of a behind the scenes tour of the workshop. And my mum and dad were sort of like, we're not so sure about this. And I go, why is that? And mum leans over. Well, first of all, we went in there, and they took movies that Weta Workshop has had their hands in producing and stuff like that, or stuff where they've done the special effects for them and props and all this sort of stuff. And the guy we had taking us on that tour was actually one of the artists, and he was showing us, I think it was called Division. There was a series of automatic weapons lined up, all exactly the same. The only difference being was at one end you had a very brand new looking piece, and by the time you got the other end, it was battle worn. And there was several phases in between. And he was actually one of the guys that did all the paintwork on these different automatic rifles they were using in the movie. So that was really cool. And they, showed us different areas and things like that. And we got to see into, I can't remember his name, Peter. So what's the smithy's name? Can't remember his name. His first name was Peter, but he is the guy that made all of the armory for the Lord of the Rings movies. So all the different weaponry you see in there, the swords, the things that the orcs use, any weaponry that's used in that movie that had metal in it, he created. And he was actually known as the Master Swordsman, which is a designation that was given to him by Queen Elizabeth II. And which meant that he was the royal swordsmaker, the royal sword maker. So I thought that was pretty cool. And they had his workshop there, and if he was there when they were doing the tours, you would actually see him working his magic with the metal and everything else. So that was pretty cool. But So, Lord of the Rings is another one that inspires people, because when we got back and we saw the second movie, I'm looking at Brad going, you've been there, you've been there, you've been there. So it's, they can inspire travel, because that scenery, my husband jokingly said, because New Zealand was not cooperating a lot with showing off the beautiful mountains that we have, it kept a lot of mountains under guard while we were there. So the second time we went down to New Zealand and Brad went, again, the mountains were under cloud. So my husband was convinced that all the mountains were CGI'd into the movies. I said, no, they are not. And I thankfully had photographs of those mountains in their full glory from, growing up in New Zealand. And so he was able to see them and that sort of thing too. But we had, and those mountains that you see in the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, they're real. They're very, very real. And the lakes and stuff that you see there too, very, very real. So, you can go and visit some of these places, and you can actually do tours in some countries that will take you on movie tours around different areas of the country and tell you what movies were made there, what scenes were played. You remember that scene when blah, 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 blah. Like in New Zealand, we also did Prince Caspian from the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian. Wolverine had some filming down there as well. There's a movie done back in the 80s, I think it was. The Race for the Yankee Zephyr was all filmed in around Queenstown, which is where all Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit was filmed around, in that area as well. So you can actually do really cool movie tours in some countries and get to see where they were. So we've talked about James Bond. We have talked about Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. Last Samurai. That was actually filmed in New Zealand. It was not filmed in Japan. The only reason it was filmed in New Zealand was and they used Mount Taranaki as a stand-in for Mount Fuji, because Mount Fuji has a lot of urban area built up around it today. And so they couldn't get a shot of the mountain without the progress in there when they're doing a period film piece. But Mount Taranaki is surrounded by farmland. So they did a lot of the filming in and around New Zealand, around the Taranaki region. And that area around Mount Taranaki is where I spent most of my youth. I lived in that area for 6 years of my life. It's the longest place I lived in the 30 years I was in New Zealand. And so I have a lot of love for that area. And there's a scene in there where Tom Cruise is teaching the Japanese how to hold the rifles and fire them. And he's standing, and I suddenly looked at it. We were watching on DVD one day, and I suddenly looked at it and went, hang on, pause that. Go back a bit, because Brad had the remote, being the man, he had the remote. And he paused it, and I says, that's Pukekura Park. He goes, what? I said, that's that park in New Zealand, in New Plymouth we took you to. And he goes, really? I says, yeah. And I said, and they've taken it. They've either done their movie magic and removed the cricket scoreboard there, or they have taken it down for the filming of the movie. I said, but where they are, that's the cricket pitch that they stand on. I said, there's built-in terraces around. It's all carved out of the hillside and everything, all the terraces and everything, all the seats have been removed, and they were just big long planks of wood. So if you look at the Last Samurai, a lot of that was filmed in New Zealand around Mount Taranaki, which is, when you're looking at the map of the North Island, if you come down the west coast side, there's that bump out on the side, that's Taranaki. And there's a mountain in the middle of that. That's the one that was used in Last Samurai. So that's a very good one to inspire trips to New Zealand and Japan as well. Because they made it look very, very much like parts of Japan and that sort of thing too. So it's, a great PR work for New Zealand as well as for Japan in that movie. The Mission Impossible, we talked about Mission Impossible series being filmed in different areas and things. And other movies that inspire travel is Roman Holiday. I think it's like from the 1940s, if I remember correctly. In and around Rome and Italy and all of those places. And A Fair to Remember is another one that was filmed around those areas and in Greece, and just had beautiful, beautiful scenery that's just like, wow, I'd really like to go there and visit that and see it. So we had that. Let's see. Around the World in 80 Days, depending which version you watch, you'll get to see a lot of different places around the world. And in that movie, different countries they visit. You'll get to see some of the scenery. You get some great mountain scenery, some great ocean scenery, some great lakes, just great scenery, period. It's a great movie for that. Under the Tuscan Sun, a good movie about the Tuscan area of Italy. And they were growing olives. I think it was olives. Was it olives? Olives. Pretty sure it was olives. That was a good movie for that. Eat, Pray, Love. You get to see hang on, she goes to Italy to eat. Where did she go to pray? Was that India or Bali? Pretty sure it was Italy, Bali, and India. Those were the 3 countries that she visited. It's been a while since I have read the book and a while since I have seen the movie. But I will say I did enjoy the book way better than I enjoyed the movie. The movie was good, but the book I think was better because it went deeper into the different things. But it was it Italy? I know it was Italy to eat. The pray part I think might have actually been India, and the love part was Bali. I may have those 2 back to front, but great. You still get to see the sceneries of those 3 incredible places and countries and things. And speaking of India, you've got the best exotic Marigold Hotel. I first saw that movie on a flight to New Zealand. Absolutely fell in love with it on that little screen on the back of the seat in front of me. That was a really cool movie about life in the city that they were in India. And you got to see some of the countryside. You got to see some of the sights as well. But it was a pretty cool movie. And that's one that when my parents were here, when my parents came over after Brad passed, we spent every evening watching a movie. We would watch a movie, and every time, and my TV was stuck on the Lifetime channel. Don't ask me why. It was stuck on the Lifetime channel. And every time we ended a movie and we stopped and it flipped back to the TV, the Golden Girls were on. So we would watch an episode of the Golden Girls, then we'd all go to bed. Those were our evenings. And then when we were here in the RV and we were traveling around on those 27 days, I had DVDs with me. We were able to watch movies as well during that time too. And one of the ones that we saw was the best exotic Marigold Hotel. My parents love Judi Dench, Maggie Smith. Who else was in there? Brain fart on that one. But they especially love Judi Dench and Maggie Smith. They've grown up with those 2 women acting and everything else, and so they had a blast watching the best exotic Marigold Hotel. Hunt for the Wilder People, that's another one I had my parents watch. It's got Sam Neill in it, and it's based in New Zealand. So it's actually about hiking through the bush in New Zealand and just how interesting hikes in New Zealand can be. We have some incredible walking trails in New Zealand that you can go hiking on, or tramping, hiking, whichever you want to call it, because we have nothing poisonous down there. You got the stinging nettle, which might make you itch a little bit. There's the Katapo spider, but you've got to be in the really wrong part of the forest and well off the walking tracks to encounter them, and he'll just make you sick. But that's about it. We have no snakes. We have no wild animals. So we have no bears, no moose, no tigers and lions and cougars and panthers and mountain lions or any of those. All you got to do in New Zealand when you're walking is watch where you put your feet so you don't trip on a rock, trip in a hole, or trip over a tree root. That's basically it, and making sure you're staying on the path. But yeah, so it's a very safe place for walking, and the scenery and that's I love New Zealand. I love doing the tramps in New Zealand. And when I come over here, I'm a little leery about doing walking trails because you guys have snakes, and then there's the wild animals, and yeah, it's just sort of like, but I come from New Zealand, I don't have to worry about any of those. And especially if I go walking with Zephy, I'm scared that she might hear a little rattle or something and decide to go and investigate, and that's the end of Zephy. So, I'm a little leery about walking doing walks through bushes in other countries. But yeah, the Hunt for the Wilder People is a really cool story. And Sam Neill is an uncle who gets stuck with his nephew, and somehow it gets out there that he's kidnapped the nephew when they've just gone walking in the bush together, and they haven't been seen for days. And so people have said, "Oh, he's been kidnapped," and the nephew's been kidnapped and stuff. So now they're on the hunt for the uncle, and it's sort of like, really, but it's a really cool story, and you meet some really great characters along the way as well. A Walk in the Woods was one that we saw with my parents when we were over here. A Walk in the Woods is based on the book by Bill Bryson, who is a very well-known travel writer. And this is about his walk on the Appalachian Trail. And I have to say, that was a really cool movie. It had Robert Redford playing Bill Bryson, and Nick Nolte was in it as well as his best friend. And they go basically walking along the Appalachian Trail, and they have some adventures on that trail. Let me just they meet some interesting characters on the Appalachian Trail. How they where my screen just went black and now it's back again. And I had to reboot everything before I got on the podcast tonight. But it's a really cool movie about two friends rediscovering each other. As far as best mates go, they were friends for a lot of years. They hadn't seen each other in a long time, so it was them getting to know each other again. And that was a really cool movie that we watched. And I kind of felt like I really want to go for a walk on the Appalachian Trail now. Then I saw some of the areas they were walking over. I'm like, yeah, not so much now. Another one that's a good favorite movie is The Bucket List, with Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman, who meet in hospital. They're put into hospital together. One's a rich guy, one's not, and they abandon everything and just go traveling the world and doing everything on their bucket list, all the things that they wanted to do before they die. It's a really cool story. The adventures they get up to. The families are ready to have them committed. They think they're nuts. They just want to spend they want to spend all the time they can with them before they die, because they both got terminal illnesses. And but it's just a very, very cool movie. I like that one very much. And that inspired me to go and write my I already had a travel bucket list, but inspired me to pull it out. And it's like, okay, what's on there? And that movie came out around the time we first started using Before the Dirt Nap. Where is it? I had it here a second ago. I had some pages marked with movies on in case I forgot. There it is. Yeah, they're both diagnosed with terminal lung cancer, and they meet while sharing a hospital room. And for the next 3 months, they just go and share adventures around the world, including an African safari, trekking to Everett Base Camp, and flying over the North Pole. Just crazy stuff. But it doesn't say what year it came out. That's any things. It doesn't say what year it came out. Let's see. 2008. Yeah, it was not long after that came out that we introduced the term Before the Dirt Nap. That came out in 2008, which was the year Brad was diagnosed with cancer. And that really inspired us to get our bucket list going and everything else. And then it was about 5 years later, we started using the slogan, we help you cross destinations off your travel bucket list before you take a dirt nap. And then it wasn't long after that. It was it before or after Brad passed? It was either just before Brad passed or just after he had passed. I was on a flight to Milwaukee and going to a weekend conference. And a friend of mine who was also going to that conference, we met at one of at the stopover airport, and ended up sitting on the plane together. We had the middle seat between us empty, and we came up with the whole concept between the two of us. We came up with the logo that you see up here. We came up with the logo. We came up with the concept of it. We got a guy on Fiverr to design it, and this is all on a plane flight. And we came up with the concept of doing Before the Dirt Nap adventures and what they would entail and things like that. So Eileen and I had a great time just brainstorming ideas. It was awesome. And all of that whole concept of the bucket travel list and everything else was inspired by the Bucket List movie. So those are just some of the things that I had on my list. There's some that I'm going to be checking out because I have heard about them, but haven't seen them yet. One of them is called The Way, Into the Wild, and it's about a guy that goes into Alaska on a big trip into Alaska. The Way stars Martin Sheen, and he goes over to his son is going to go and do what's the name of that? There's that pilgrimage in Spain that you can do. I know Santiago is involved in the title. Can't remember the full name of it. It's just totally escaped my brain. But Martin Sheen goes and his son dies on that trail, so he goes over there to collect his son's ashes and finishes the pilgrimage on behalf of his son. And his son, Emilio Estevez, so Martin Sheen's son, Emilio Estevez, actually directs the movie and has a role in there as well. And if you have seen their book, they actually wrote an autobiography together. And I think it's called Father and Son, if I remember correctly. And you got a few chapters there on Martin Sheen, then Emilio Estevez comes into it, and then they're going chapter for chapter. And they even talk in the audio book, they actually take turns reading their own chapters. And throughout the book, they weave through the story of filming the movie The Way, and some of the challenges that they had, and how Martin Sheen wanted to do some of his own stunts. And his son was like, yeah, no, Dad, no way. So it was a really cool book to read, and it has inspired me to go and watch the movie The Way. I have not yet got to it. I do have it, but I just haven't had a chance to watch it. The other one was The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. I have not heard of this movie, but every list I looked at when I was researching different movies that inspire travel, that was what I Googled, movies that inspire travel. And there was a whole bunch of websites came up with a whole bunch of, this movie was on every single list. And it's called The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. It's traveling all around the world. I don't know much about the story, except this guy, Walter, goes traveling around the world. That's all I can tell you about it. So I've got that now on my list to watch as well. So I'm looking forward to watching that when I get a chance to. Oh, and I almost forgot one. I haven't seen this one in years. Some of you remember this, since I watch National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation every year for Christmas. It's the movie that starts my Christmas fest. On my birthday, I watch National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and that kicks off my Christmas movie fest. But there's also National Lampoon Vacation, where they drive to Wally World. I have only seen that movie a couple of times. I have. It's been a lot of years since I've seen that movie. And there's also European Vacation as well. I've only seen that one once though. Yeah, but I still like my Christmas Vacation one. Anyway, that's it from us. What are some of your favorite movies that inspire you to travel? Let us know in the comments below. What are some of the movies that we may not have spoken about in here that inspire you to go traveling? You see these movies and you say, oh, I'd really like to go there. You know, like Out of Africa, where they do the African safari and things. That's another good one, which I haven't seen. Lawrence of Arabia was on some of the lists as well. And I thought, well, I have that one to watch in my classic movie fest when I figure out when I'm going to do that. They got a couple of very busy months coming up. So it's going to be a while before I do another movie fest. Maybe end of March. Well, end of March will definitely be one, because Brad's birthday is in March. So we will definitely be doing either a Lord of the Rings trilogy, a Hobbit trilogy, a Star Wars. Yeah, Star Wars. I might actually. I don't even know what day his birthday is on this year. What day is it on this year? Oh, it's on a Thursday. That's going to be interesting. I might do a Star Wars thing. I know the original movies were ones that he really, really enjoyed. And he actually went to the premiere of the very first Star Wars movie when it came out in, was it 1977? And he was in full Planet of the Apes costume. Face applique thingies that looked like the ape, but when he moved his mouth, everything moved. You could see his eyes and everything. I actually have a photo of him in that costume as well. And he was wearing a vest from the actual movie. So that's pretty cool. And I still have that vest. But yeah, he was dressed head to foot, and him and his mates all went dressed as characters from Planet of the Apes to the opening of Star Wars, the very first Star Wars movie that came out. And I think it was like 1977 it came out. And I have photographs of them sitting out by the pool at the back of Brad's parents' house, and they're putting the makeup, the facial pieces on each other, and they got ready there and then drove downtown to go to the premiere of Star Wars. So that's his connection to Star Wars. So I may even do a whole Star Wars thing, actually starting at episode 1 all the way through to episode 6. I don't know. Haven't decided yet. But anyway, I'm out of here. Go have a super fantastic, sparkling rest of your evening. Remember, leave a list in the comments below of what are some of your favorite movies that inspire you to go traveling. And we will catch you guys back here tomorrow evening around 6 p.m. Pacific. What's tomorrow? Tuesday. Yeah, we're good. We're good for Tuesday. Yep, we're good. We'll see you around here. Actually, no. Hang on. We might have a glitch for tomorrow night. Oh no, we're good. We're good. 6 p.m. Pacific tomorrow night. That's another night that I have something on that evening. Anyway, go out, have a super fantastic sparkling evening, and we'll catch you guys back here at 6 p.m. Pacific tomorrow night. Hei konera.